Everyone Saranai, good evening, Venerable Mahasangha, Sayales, and dear brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Today, it's going to be a short lesson. We'll be discussing the questions and answers related to the Arammana tika that we received over the past couple of weeks. The first question, can the patisaṅdhi citta, rebirth-linking consciousness, take a present object, Paccuppannārammaṇa, as its sense object? So first we will look at the maranasanna citta viti, the cognitive process close to death. Now the process close to death is sixfold depending on which door the sense object entered through. So the maranasanna citta viti, process close to death, can be either one of the 5 panchadvara citta viti, that is the chakkudvara eye door, sotadvara ear door, ganadvara nose door, jivhadvara tongue door, kayadvara body door, or it can be the Manodvāra, the mind door. So in this way, the process close to death is sixfold. Then again, each of these are fourfold. So altogether, 6 into 4, we get 24 different forms of cognitive processes close to death, or maranasanna citta viti. Now let's see how each of these become fourfold. We'll first take one of the 5 panchadvara maranasanna citta viti. So we will look at the chakkudvara maranasanna citta viti, the eye door cognitive process close to death. So when the sense object comes into contact with the eye door, we first get the atita bhavanga, past bhavanga, then bhavanga chalana, vibrational bhavanga, bhavanga upacheda, rest bhavanga. And next we get the 5 door adverting, or the Panchadvaravajjana citta occurring. Soon after we get the eye consciousness, the chakku viññāna, the samāpatti receiving, santirana investigating, and vottapana determining. Then after that we get the javana citta. Now unlike the normal cognitive processes, here we get, instead of 7 javanas, either 4 or 5 javana. Here we have given the instance where there are 5 javana, because it's a very weak, the mind, the heart base is very weak because it's close to death. Therefore, it is not possible to have 7 javana. Instead, there's either 4 or 5 javana. Now, after the javana occurs, this is where the difference begins. So how does the chakkudvara maranasanna viti become fourfold? You can see after the javana, in the first one, we get the death, or the chuti citta, and then subsequently the patisaṅdhi, or the rebirth-linking citta. In the second one, subsequent to the 5 javana, there is a bhavanga citta, and then chuti, and followed by patisaṅdhi. And the next one, the third one, is where you get 5 javana, 2 dhammā, 2 registration chittas, followed by chuti patisaṅdhi. And the fourth instance is where there are 2 dhammā registration, bhavanga, and chuti. And subsequently, the next citta viti will start with patisaṅdhi. So these are the variations, the 4 different types of chakkudvara maranasanna citta viti. Now, we must also remember, now we are talking about the chakkudvara maranasanna citta vitis. Not only the chakkudvara, but also the other 4. So basically, the 5, the panchadvara maranasanna citta viti will take a present object as its sense object. So as you can see, the citta viti lasts for 17 mind moments. So when the chakkudvara maranasanna citta viti takes a present object, because there are only 5 javana, it's a shorter citta viti. Therefore, it is possible for the Chuti patisaṅdhi and two of the bhavangas, according to the first variation, it can take a present object as its sense object. So similarly, you must apply this to the other four Panchadvara Chitta Viti as well. So there is a possibility for the Maranasana Chitta Viti when it comes to the five sense doors to take a present object as its sense object. Now, similar to the Panchadvara Maranasana Chitta Viti, the Manodvāra Maranasana Chitta Viti, the mind or cognitive process close to death, also is fourfold. So here we have given the four variations of the Manodvāra Maranasana Chitta Viti. So here what is different is that instead of the Panchadvāravajjana, we get the Manodvāravajjana, the mind door adverting chitta, initiating the process. That's at number 4. And then subsequently we get 4 or 5 javana. And then the first one we get the chuti and then patisaṅdhi. The second we get bhavanga, chuti, patisaṅdhi. And then the third one, 2 thadārammana, 2 registration, chuti, patisaṅdhi. Or you can have 2 thadārammana, bhavanga, then chuti and patisaṅdhi. So these are the 4 variations when it comes to the Manodvāra Maranasana Chitta Viti. Now this is a paragraph from the Abhidhammatta Sangaha where it is mentioned that in the death proximate cognitive process, the Maranasana Chitta Viti, only 5 weakly active impulsions, javana, are to be expected. Therefore, if death occurs while a present object, a Paccuppannārammaṇa, are still within range and enduring, then the rebirth-linking patisaṅdhi and the bhavanga consciousness can also have present objects as their object. Thus, in the case of a kāmāvachara patisaṅdhi, a sense sphere rebirth, the kamma nimitta, signs of kamma, and of the destiny, gati nimitta, which are taken through the 6 doors, are found to be either present or past object. But kamma itself is only a past object and it's taken through the mind door. All of these kamma nimitta, gati nimitta, are in any case of the nature of paritta, limited objects. So in summary, the kāmāvachara patisaṅdhi the kamma nimitta and gati nimitta are all paritta or limited sense objects. Kamma is always a past object and it's always an object for the Manodvāra Maranasana Chitta Viti. The kāmāvachara patisaṅdhi can take a kamma nimitta and the gati nimitta as its sense object, and here it can be a past or present object and can act as the object for all 6 types of Maranasana Chitta Viti. So this is the summary on kāmāvachara patisaṅdhi. Now let's look at how it is given in the Dhammasaṅgani Attakatha and the Dhammasaṅgani Mūla Tika. In the Dhammasaṅgani Attakatha, we discussed that the kamma and kamma nimitta are mentioned as past objects. But in the Mūla Tika, it's explained that kamma nimitta can also be an object for the Panchadvara Maranasana Chitta Viti. So when it is an object for a Panchadvara Maranasana Chitta Viti, then it has to be a present object. Therefore, if it's a present object, it can be a present object for the patisaṅdhi of the subsequent life as well. But how does the Mūla Tika describe what is mentioned in the Attakatha? Is that it says that here what is mentioned as kamma and kamma nimitta being past objects, it's only with reference to the mind Maranasana Chitta Viti. And not the Panchadvara Maranasana Viti. So here the kamma nimitta is a past object when it comes to the mind Maranasana Chitta Viti. Now let's look at the next question. I was reviewing Parittārammaṇa tika as teacher advised last time. Then a question about Manodvāravajjana citta as its function in the Manodvāraviti came up. It is given that the Manodvāravajjana citta is able to take Nibbāna as its object in the third term appamāṇārammaṇa dhammā, which is confusing to me because I thought that Nibbāna is taken as object for the first time by Gotrabhu or Vodana citta and not by any other preceding citta. So basically the question is, when it comes to appamāṇārammaṇa dhammā, how can the Manodvāravajjana citta take Nibbāna as its sense object? So to understand this, let's look at the different consciousness and their respective sense objects. When it comes to the 12 akusala and the 8 jnana vipayutta kamajavana, that means the 4 kamavachara jnana vipayutta kusala and the 4 kamavachara jnana vipayutta kriya. These 20 chittas can take all Dhamma except for the supramundane Dhamma. So what are the supramundane Dhamma? These are the 8 Lokuttara Chitta and Nibbāna. Except for those, they can take the 81 mundane Chitta, 52 Chetasika, 28 Rupa, as well as concepts, Paññāti, as their sense object. When it comes to the 4 Jnana Sampayutta Kamavachara Kusala and the Abhiññā, 5th Jnana Kusala, these Chittas can take all Dhamma except for the Arahatta, Magga and Phala. Then when it comes to the Manodvāravajjana, the 4 Jnana Sampayutta Kamavachara Kriya and the 5th Jnana Abhiññā Kriya Chitta, these consciousness can take all Dhammas as their sense object. Now let's look at the appamāṇārammaṇa dhammā, the states that have immeasurable sense objects. Here we have on the left hand side the anekānta appamāṇārammaṇa dhammā. These are the dhammas that always take an immeasurable sense object. And then we have the anekānta appamāṇārammaṇa dhammā, the citta cetasika that take an immeasurable object as well as others as its sense object. So here you know that the Lokuttara Chitta, the 8 supramundane consciousness, together with their 36 mental factors, always take Nibbāna as their sense object. And the 8 Jnana Sampayutta kusala kriya. So these are Kamavachara, the 4 Jnana Sampayutta kusala and the 4 Jnana Sampayutta kriya. The Abhiññā 5th Jnana kusala kriya. The Manodvāravajjana, together with their 33 mental factors, these can take an immeasurable, an appamāṇārammaṇa dhammā as their sense object, but it's not always, it's anekānta. They also have the ability to take others as their sense objects. So then, what are the dhammas that take Nibbāna as their sense object? The 8 supramundane, the 8 Lokuttara Chitta are ekānta dhammas. That means they always take Nibbāna as their object. And the 8 Jnana Sampayutta kusala and kriya, the 4 wholesome kusala and the 4 kamavachara kriya associated with knowledge. And the 5th jhana kusala and kriya abhiññā and Manodvāravajjana. These are the dhammas that can take Nibbāna as their sense object. So now we come to the question, how come Manodvāravajjana citta can take Nibbāna as its sense object? So the answer lies here in this slide. So Paccavekkhana, the process of reviewing, is something that the Sotapatti Sakadagami, Anagami, and Arahatta individuals do after each of the four supramundane paths have been attained. So what they do is these disciples, they review the path. They can review one of five things: the path, frushan, Nibbāna, the defilements that have been abandoned, as well as the defilements remaining. However, when it comes to an arahant, only the first four that I mentioned are reviewed, because they are fully liberated and they don't have any more remaining defilements to be reviewed. So this table summarizes the four individuals and their object of review, the Paccavekkhana. So Sotapatti individual can review the path, fruit, Nibbāna, defilements abandoned, or the defilements remaining. And the same goes for the Sakadagami as well as the Anagami individuals. But when it comes to the Arahant, they can review only one of these four: path, fruit, Nibbāna, defilements abandoned, because they have fully eliminated all their defilements. So altogether we get 19 different review knowledges. So when it comes to this review process, the process will naturally start from, it's a mind-o process. So it will naturally start from a Manodvāravajjana citta. So therefore the Manodvāravajjana, when that individual is reviewing Nibbāna, will take Nibbāna as its object. So to answer the question regarding appamāṇārammaṇa dhammā, how can the Manodvāravajjana citta take Nibbāna as its object? It is during the review process, and if that individual is reviewing Nibbāna, then the Manodvāravajjana citta will take Nibbāna as its sense object, as the starting citta, and subsequently there will be the kusala if it's a Sotapatti, Sakadagami or Anagami individual, or it will be a Jnana Sampayutta Mahakriya citta in the case of an Arahant, occurring after the Manodvāravajjana citta as Javana citta of that particular cognitive process. We now come to the third question. Regarding Abhiññā, kusala and kriyā citta, taking Nibbāna as an anekānta object in the appamāṇārammaṇa triplet, are they referring to nirodha samāpatti? Just to make sure if my understanding is correct. So the answer is no, it is not referring to nirodha samāpatti. Let's look at this slide, which we discussed before during a previous lesson. Here the Pubbē nivāsānussati jnana, when one recollects their former lives, can take a paritta, mahaggata or appamāṇārammaṇa as well as nivattabba-rammana, an undefinable object. So how, we will talk only about the appamāṇa. How is it possible or how does an immeasurable object, appamāṇārammaṇa, become an object for the Pubbē nivāsānussati jnana? At the time of recollecting the path cultivated and the frushan realized by self or others in the past. The Buddhas in the past cultivated the path, realized the frushan and entered parinibbāna by the element of Nibbāna. Here also is an immeasurable object from reflecting on the path, frushan and Nibbāna of the Buddhas who have cut off the round of rebirths. So this is the example given in the Attasalini, the Dhammasangani Attakatha, on how the Pubbē nivāsānussati jnana can take a appamāṇārammaṇa, an immeasurable sense object. And similarly, when it comes to the anekānta jnana, it can take an immeasurable object as its sense object. So here it's given, at the time of knowing, he will cultivate the path, realize the frushan, enter parinibbāna by the element of Nibbāna. So this is the example given regarding Abhiññā. So the Pubbē nivāsānussati jnana as well as the anekānta jnana can take appamāṇā, an immeasurable object as its object in these instances. Now we come to the next question. Dear teacher, I am reading the notes on Parittārammaṇa tika again. Can you please explain to me why are the three virati excluded from the anekānta mahaggatārammaṇa dhammā, but not from the anekānta parittārammaṇa dhammā, as they are the same 31 citta? So first we will look at the parittārammaṇa dhammā, the states that have limited sense objects. On the left hand side we have the ekānta parittārammaṇa dhammā, meaning that they always take a limited sense object. They always take a paritta dhamma as their sense object. Then on the right hand side we have the anekānta parittārammaṇa dhammā, meaning that at times they can take limited as well as other objects as their sense objects. So here we will focus on the anekānta parittārammaṇa dhammā. Here we get Manodvāravajjana, the 28 kāmāvachara javana, that is, those are the 12 akusala, 8 kusala, 8 kriyā, and the 2 Abhiññā, 5th jhana, kusala and kriyā, together with 50 cetasika, excluding only the 2 appamāṇā, the illimitables. Now here virati are not excluded. So that is one point we have to note. Now let's look at the mahaggatārammaṇā, states that have sublime sense objects. What are sublime sense objects? Sublime sense object means the 15 rūpāvachara, fine material sphere, cittas, together with their mental factors, and the 12 arūpāvachara, immaterial sphere, cittas, and their cetasika. These are what are called sublime sense objects. So the dhammas, the states that take these mahaggata dhamma as their sense objects, are the mahaggatārammaṇa dhamma. So these are sublime sense objects when a citta is taking these sense objects as their ārammana. There's no way that there can be appamāṇā arising, because appamāṇā always arise with regard to a concept, a paññati, basically living beings. So it's not possible for appamāṇā to arise when the sense object is a mahaggata dhamma. And it is the same with virati. When a citta is concentrating, when a citta is taking a mahaggata dhamma as its sense object, there is no abstinence. They're not abstaining from any misconducts. So again, the virati also are not possible to arise in relation to a sublime sense object. That is why if you look at the ekānta mahaggatārammaṇa dhamma as well as the anekānta mahaggatārammaṇa dhamma, you can see that the 2 appamāṇā and the 3 virati are excluded from both categories. So it's understood. Now when you look at the anekānta mahaggatārammaṇa dhamma, the cittas are similar to that of the anekānta parittārammaṇa dhamma. It's the same 31 citta, but the only difference is instead of 50 cetasika, which we saw under anekānta parittārammaṇa dhamma, here we are seeing 47 because we have excluded the 3 virati as well. So why did we exclude the virati? It's because when one is focusing on a mahaggata dhamma, that is either the 15 rūpāvachara citta, the 12 arūpāvachara citta, or their mental factors, it is not possible for a virati to arise because they are not abstaining from any wrongdoing. So for that reason, the 3 virati are excluded. Now, to understand about the virati, we will look at the akusala kammapada, the unwholesome causes of action, together with the arammana, the objects that they take. The first three, pāṇātipato, killing, adinādāna, theft, micchāchāro, wrong conduct. These correspond to micchā kammanto, wrong action, bodily action. So pāṇātipato, killing, takes jivitindriya, life faculty, as their sense object. Now here you can see that we have saṅkhārārammana in blue and sattarammana in red. Saṅkhārārammana means when the object is a conditioned thing. And sattarammana refers to living beings, and these are concepts. So the ones in red are concepts, whereas the ones in blue are conditioned things. So pāṇātipāta always take a saṅkhārārammana as its object. Then adinādāna takes either sattarammana or saṅkhārārammana. Wrong conduct, micchāchāro, takes saṅkhārārammana, sense of touch, pottabba, and according to some teachers, can take sattārārammana. Then we come to the four micchā vāca. Musavādo referring to falsehood, pisuna vāca, calumnious speech, parusa vāca, harsh speech, and sampappalāpo, frivolous talk. These can take sattārārammana as their sense object, or in the case of musavāda and sampappalāpa, they can take saṅkhārārammana as well. And the last three are the mental. Now we have the body door, the verbal door, and we have the mind door. The last three are with reference to the mind door, and we are not going to talk about them here because we are focusing on the akusala kamma pata, which are related to micchā vāca and micchā kammanto. So as you can see, they can take as their sense object either a conditioned thing or a concept. So what are the virati, abstinences? Sammā vāca, right speech, sammā kammanto, right action, and sammā ājīvo, right livelihood. Sammā kammanto, right action. So as we mentioned before, the abstinence from the three unwholesome bodily deeds are called sammā kammanto. And these are abstaining from pāṇātipato, killing, adinādāna, stealing, and kāmesu micchāchāro, sexual misconduct. Sammā vāca, right speech, the abstinence from the four unwholesome verbal deeds. Musavādo, false speech, pisuna vāca, slandering, parusa vāca, harsh speech, and sampappalāpo, frivolous talk. Sammā ājīvo, right livelihood. Here it is described in two ways. One is the mundane sammā ājīvo, the other is the supramundane sammā ājīvo. Sāsavo puññabhāgyo upadivepakko, right livelihood that is influenced by dormant impurities and siding with merit, resulting in acquisitions. This is called the mundane, sammā ājīvo. And ariyo anāsavo lokuttaro maggangu, right livelihood that is noble, free from impurities, supramundane, and a factor of the path. That is the supramundane sammā ājīvo. But here what we are referring to is the sāsavo sammā ājīvo, the mundane sammā ājīva. Micchā jīvam pahāya sammā jīvena jīvikam kappeti. Having abandoned wrong livelihood, makes right livelihood his way of living. That is the sammā ājīva that we are referring to here. Now again, Samma Ajiva, the mundane Samma Ajiva is described in two ways. One applies to everyone, but it's specially for the monastics in reference to unwholesome ways of seeking requisites and material profits. And here, Miccha Ajiva, wrong livelihood, is defined as these five: Kuhana, deceit, scheming; Lapana, flattery or talking; Nemitta hinting; Nippesikata, belittling; Labena laba, nijigisanata, pursuing gain with gain. And now these five are mainly for monastics, but it's applicable to everyone. For lay people, five kinds of wrong livelihood have been specified, and here I have taken this section from the Vānijja Sutta, from the Anguttara Nikaya section of fives, where Miccha Ajiva is defined as trade in weapons, trade in living creatures, trade in meat or intoxicants or poison. So these are the five modes of wrong livelihood. And abstaining from these five would be right livelihood or samma ajiva. Now let's look at this table, which gives the consciousness and whether they arise together with the virati abstinences or the appamāṇā illimitables. The kāmāvacchara, the sense sphere, kusala, wholesome, may or may not be associated with the three virati or the appamāṇā. So they are called aniyata yogi. They are present only in certain states. Then when it comes to the resultant vipakas, they are never associated with the three abstinences or the appamāṇā. But the mahakriya will not be associated with the virati. Why is that? The mahakriya arises for the arahants, and arahants have abandoned all their defilements. So if they have abandoned all their defilements, there is no way that a virati could arise, because they don't do any bad karma. Therefore, there will not be any virati occurring together with the mahakriya. But the appamāṇā may arise in relation to the mahakriya, particularly when an arahant is perhaps, for instance, developing karuna or mudita towards a living being. Then there could be the appamāṇā arising. So it may or may not occur depending on the circumstance. Then when it comes to the rūpāvacchara and arūpāvacchara, kusala, vipāka and kriya, there will not be any virati arising. But when it comes to the rūpāvacchara citta, the appamāṇā may arise. For example, with mudita or karuna bhavana, there could be one of the two appamāṇā arising together with those kusala, vipāka and kriya citta. Then the lokuttara, magga and palachitta, virati are always a part of the eightfold noble truth. So the eightfold, the magganga, the eight magganga, so they will always be there. But the appamāṇā are never associated with the magga and pala. So these are how we get the virati and appamāṇā associated with different types of citta. So coming back to the akusala kammapatta. Here we have the first three as miccha kammanto and the next four miccha vacha. So abstaining from these would be samma kammanto and samma vacha. And what are their objects? They could either be a saṅkārārammana, a conditioned thing, or it could be a paññatti, concept, a sattarammana. So when it comes to parittārammaṇa dhammā, so according to our previous slide, we mentioned that the mahakusala, may be associated with virati at times. So here, if a mahakusala has samma kammanta or has samma vacha or samma ajiva, the sense object could either be a concept or a saṅkhārārammana. When it's a saṅkhārārammana, it is usually a parittārammaṇa. So this is how the mahakusala can have a parittārammaṇa as its sense object when it's having a virati associated with that consciousness. So now we come back to the table of Parittārammaṇa Dhamma. Now the anekānta Parittārammaṇa Dhamma anyway do not have the three virati, because as we mentioned here we have the kāmāvaccara vipāka, and the vipāka are not associated with virati anyway. And hasituppada again occurs to arahants. That's a kriyā citta that is also not associated with the virati. So virati are excluded anyway from those. Now, when it comes to the anekānta Parittārammaṇa Dhamma, when do we get the virati being associated? It is in relation to the 8 kusala. And the 8 kusala here can take a paritta dhamma as its sense object, and they may be associated with virati, as according to the objects that we mentioned under the akusala kamma pata, they can either be sattarammana or saṅkhārārammana. So when it's a saṅkhārārammana, it is a parittārammaṇa dhamma. So that is when the kusala is associated with virati, when the arammana is a paritta or a limited sense object. So that is why we didn't exclude the 3 virati from the cetasika, because this instance is there. Yes, and of course the appamāṇā are excluded because appamāṇā always take a concept, paññāti, as its sense object, and here we are talking about parittārammaṇa dhamma. Therefore, anyway, appamāṇā will be excluded from this term. So with that, we come to the end of our discussion. If you have any questions, maybe we can take 1 or 2 questions now, or you can email your questions to this email address.
I think someone raised a hand.
Oh yeah, Jordi has raised a hand. Yes, Jordi, do you have a
Yes, Acharya Terawan Saranai, thank you for the teaching. I have a question, Doctor, regarding the what is it called? The object of Tasa Akusala Kama Pata, right? So I
Jordi,
saw
it's
that.
a little unclear. There is a background noise that I'm hearing.
Oh, sorry. Now is it clear, Doctor?
Yes, it's better now.
Sorry. Yes, sorry. I was in a near well, loud. So Teron Saranai, Doctor.
Silvan Saranai.
So Doctor, I want to know regarding the Dasa Kusala Kamapata, right? I saw that there are the object. So for example, the Panatipata is a Sankhara object, the Divitindriya of target. Is it like that? And then the one that I want to ask is actually I want to, if possible, please explain more about the four wrong speech. How does, for example, the Musawada have Sankara and Satta is the object, etc.
Okay, sorry, let me go back to that slide. Okay, can you see my slide? Oh, sorry. Yeah. So your question is regarding musavado, falsehood. You want an example when sattarammana or sankarammana becomes an object. Is that the question?
Yeah, exactly, Doctor.
Okay. So sattarammana would be a living being, paññāti. So when someone is thinking of a, let's say, an individual or a living being, and then speaking of a lie, taking that living being as the object of thought, then it will be a sattarammana. But a sankararamana, let's say, for instance, I am thinking uh, of a particular object, let's say a gold bangle. So in my mind, what we would see, the arammana would be the color of that bangle. So my object of thought would be the color, the vana rupa of that bangle. So then it will be a parittārammaṇa, and let's say I have stolen it, and I say that I didn't steal that object. So then the object of my musavada, falsehood, will be a sankararammaṇa, because in my mind I'm thinking of that bangle, gold bangle. It's basically the color that we can see. So I visualize that and I say, no, I haven't stolen that object. So that is one example of a sankararamana. Here we haven't listed, unlike in under Pāṇātipāta, where we specifically say jivitindriyam, because it's always the jivitindriyam that Pāṇātipāta takes as an object. But the other sankararamana are very diverse. That is why we haven't listed them out. So it can be anything. It can be a sound, something a visible object, the color of the object, or a smell, taste. It could be anything when it comes to this sankararamana. But Pāṇātipāta is defined as basically the person who is killing doesn't want that whoever, that living being, to continue living. So it is against the jivitindriyam that the Pāṇātipāto, that Micchā Kammanta, operates against the life faculty. So the individual who is killing doesn't want the life faculty of that other being to go on. It is always the case when it comes to killing. That is why we have mentioned jivitindriya, whereas for the others, the object is very diverse, which we basically can't list out. That is why we have just simply given it as sankararamana. Is that clear?
Oh, okay. So for the musawada and also for the Pāṇātipāta, for example, if I hit an animal because of angry mind, dosa mind, therefore I hit this animal, but actually I hit it because I want it to suffer, not because I want to take its life. But because of this beating, then the animal dies. Is that breaking the Pāṇātipāta precept or not?
Okay, so your initial intention is not to kill. But if your initial intention was to kill, then of course you will get the full-blown effect of Pāṇātipāto. But according to the Kammapata, what is said is you have to have the initial intention to kill. You have to do that action so that that certain animal would die. So it is very complex here. There is one place where is given in, I think it is in the Attakatha. Let's say I am giving orders for someone to be murdered. I tell this person, okay, you take a gun, you go at 2 o'clock in the morning and shoot that man and kill him. So the assassin, he goes, but he is unable to perform the task at 2 o'clock in the morning. Instead, he goes and shoots that man at 4 o'clock in the morning. So what is said in the Attakatha is that because the deed was not performed at the time that I mentioned, I will not get the what do you call, the akusala of killing, because the assassin went and killed at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's a different time. So it's very complex, very conflicting here. Although I gave the order to kill and this assassin went and killed that man because of my order, but he didn't follow exactly what I said. He went and did it at a different time. Then for that reason, I will not get the sin of panatipato. So panatipato is either I do it myself or I get someone else to do it. But of course, that is how the Attakatha describes it. It's very conflicting, and sometimes it feels like it doesn't feel right somehow.
Oh yeah, yeah. I heard about that story about you stabbed him in the right eye, but instead the assassin stabbed in the left eye, so it is not my fault. Okay.
Yes, it's a very unusual thing. Yes.
How about the parusawacha? For example, I say, uh, uh, your body is so fat, your stomach is so fat. For example, this is regarding the shape, right? The wana, the rupa of that object, isn't it? How
Yeah.
about it is still asataramana?
Yeah, so initially you form your thought, okay, your body is fat. But when you go to uh, shout at a person, you're shouting at an individual, at a living being. Not really at the body. You're not shouting at the body, but at the living being. So that is why it becomes Sattaraman in that instance. You're scolding the person, not the body. You're scolding the person.
I see, I see. Oh, okay, okay, understand. So, although I say something about his physique, but actually, at the time I say, the intention is to hurt him, right?
Exactly. You want to hurt that living being.
I see. And how about the Vyapada? Does it mean that only if we are angry towards someone that can produce the akusala kamapata? So, for example, um, how to give if I if I if I'm angry at the weather at the sky because today rains, although I want to dry my clothes, can it produce akusala kamapata or not?
Yeah, so it will not be a vyapada akusala kamapata. If you are angry that it's going to rain and you can't dry your clothes, that will not result in a unwholesome what do you call, a subhuman, a birth in a subhuman realm. The kammapata that we are mentioning here are the ones, the very severe kamma that can result in a birth in a subhuman realm. So, if you're angry about the weather, you're angry about minor things, that will not result in you being born in one of the four hell realms. That will not happen. Vyapada is something more severe. It's a very huge sort of a strong anger that builds against another living being. But of course, when you take a dosha mula chitta is diverse. Vyapada is just one part of this dosa mula chitta. Not all dosa mula chitta will end up being a vyapada chitta. So you can have minor aversions towards certain things which will never result in completion of this akusala kamma pata. Because if that is the case, then we will not have any way out, because most of the time, if you take our day, the 24 hours, most of the time we are generating lobha dosa moha chitta, and it's a very small number of moments that we generate kusala chitta. So in that case, we will all end up in hell. But nature is very fair in the sense that only when it goes into a very extreme uh, length, that's only when, like abhijja, vyapada, michcha, ditti, when it comes to the mind of akusala kammapata, it becomes something that will result in a birth in a subhuman realm. So, dosa mula citta can occur regarding saṅkārārammana or sattārammana, but when it comes to vyapada, ill will, it is always sattārammana.
Actually, there's one more regarding panatipata, but
Okay.
is it too long? Or
Sorry, I didn't get it.
one more question regarding panatipata. Is it okay?
Okay, that's okay.
Sorry, Brother JJ. So, uh, so I heard that we know that maybe Bodhisatta at the time of he was a villager and his relatives caught the fishes, right? Caught the fishes and then beat the fishes to death. And then the Bodhisatta think that the Bodhisatta feel happy for the catches, and then because of that akusala karma, therefore Buddha at the time he felt the headache. So mm, some some people explain that because the Bodhisatta did a panatipata karma, because although he didn't perform, but he feel happy for the killing of others. But if at the we didn't know exactly, we don't know exactly what is the mind of the Bodhisatta at the time, but if he feels happy not because of the killing, not because of the ending of the Jivitindriya of the fishes, um, more to the villager, his relative, able to cook many fishes, and yeah, is that also panatipata or not?
Okay, so that is unlikely to be Panatipata. So here in that story, Bodhisattva, he was watching his relatives catch fish, and when the fish was taken out of the water, he could see the fish jumping up and down, and he was very happy to see that movement of the fish jumping up and down. It gave him pleasure. Of course, it eventually resulted in the death of those fish. But here he did not perform the act of killing. He was just rejoicing in seeing those fish jumping up and down and struggling. But of course, he knew that the fish were going to die, and that the fish were suffering, which was why he ended up subsequently, when even after becoming a Buddha, he had a severe headache as a result. But here it doesn't account to Panatipata because he didn't do it himself, nor did he tell his relatives to kill them. He was merely enjoying the view. He was watching the fish suffer and he was enjoying it. So if a person enjoys the suffering of another living being, then that is also akusala kamma. But it doesn't account to Panatipata.
Wow. So actually this slide makes it more clear about how the doing of the 10 akusala kamapata mahanumudana, Dr.
We'll be talking more about this akusala kammapata when we are talking about the Chittupada Kanda. There's a separate large section on the akusala kammapata, and we'll be talking about it then. Okay, so I think there are no more questions. With that, we will conclude our lesson today. Yeah, so Brother JJ, can we do the lesson on the 30th of November? Sorry, I couldn't ask you before.
30th of November should be okay.
Yeah, okay, so the next lesson would be on the 30th of November. In the absence of any questions, we will share merits.
因为既然没有什么问题呢，那我们就一起来做这个功德的分享。
Ākāsattā ca bhummattā Devānāgā mahiddhikā puñyantaṃ anumoditva chiran rakkantu sāsanaṃ chiran rakkantu desanaṃ chiran rakkantu mamparaṃ. Idam me ñātīnaṃ hotu sukitā hontu ñāteyo. Idam me ñātīnaṃ hotu sukitā hontu ñāteyo. Idam me ñātīnaṃ hotu sukitā hontu ñāteyo. Iminā puñya kammena māme bāla samāgamo sataṃ samāgamo hotu yāva nibbāna pattiyā. Idam me puñyaṃ āsavakkaya vahaṃ hotu. Idam me puñyaṃ nibbānassa paccayo hotu. Mama puñya bhāgaṃ sabba sattānaṃ bhājemi. Te sabbe me samaṃ puñya bhāgaṃ labantu. Buddha sāsanaṃ chiran tiṭṭatu. Buddha sāsanaṃ chiran tiṭṭatu. Buddha sāsanaṃ chiran tiṭṭatu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.